कंट्रोवर्शियल सियासतदान के तौर पे भी जानते हैं। तो ये बहुत खुशी की बात है कि वो आज हम सब लोगों के बहुत सारे जो कंसर्न्स भी हो सकते हैं, जो व्यूज़ भी हो सकते हैं, वो उनको सुनेंगे भी और हम उनको सुन पाएंगे डिटेल में। तो खालिद साहब, आपका क्या ख्याल है? क्या अगर खान साहब को टाइम लग रहा है तो हम टाइम वेस्ट ना करें और शुरू करें? और
जी जी बिल्कुल, हम के आर खान साहब को, के रहमान खान साहब को इनवाइट कर सकते हैं और के रहमान
जी
खान
हाँ, जी
साहब
हाँ,
इसको शुरू कर सकते हैं।
हाँ। तो इब्तदाइया के तौर पे रहमान खान साहब जो अगेन एक सीरियस सियासतदान हैं भारत के, उनको हम लोग मदऊ कर रहे हैं कि वो उनसे शुरुआत करते हैं इस आज की वेबिनार की। खान साहब।
Good afternoon to everybody. Good afternoon to Mr. Prabhu. I am very happy to welcome Sri Suresh Prabhu to this interacting meeting. Sri Suresh Prabhu and I belong to the same profession. We are friends from last 25 years. We know each other. We are fellow parliamentarians. And as Sibaji has rightly said, he is one of the outstanding parliamentarian, a good human being, a good social worker, a good cooperator, and he has built several organizations. In that capacity, his participation and interaction with all of us will be very useful. Mr. Prabhu, as you know that the name of the organization itself is Indian Muslim for Progress and Change, Reforms. There is in every society needs a reforms. Every society needs progress. But unfortunately, whether you call a society or a religion, we are suffering orthodoxism. Because of orthodoxism, we will not be able to bring progress sometimes or reforms in the society. Reforms or progress does not mean that you have to give up your religious thought, but you have to give up, you have to change your thoughts which are not nothing to do with religion with the times. So this is the main purpose of this organization, and it is an organization of intellectuals, academicians, and very few politicians, and then there is journalists and all intellectual community who have with one motto that to change, to bring progress and reform in the Muslim society. And Muslims, as every one of us knows, is an integral part of the Indian society. They are citizens and they have same concern for the nation as anybody else. So, but in the society we see today, there is lot of distortion, lot of misunderstanding, lot of there is a what is called a communal virus has developed in recent past, which is not only hurting the people concerned, but it is not in the interest of the development of the country. So this organization wants to interact with all sections of the society, intellectuals, politicians, and lawmakers, and then our what we call our Buddhists and all religious leaders also, to remove this misunderstanding and to go forward for construction of the country. And this is what Empower is doing. I think I will leave it these two thoughts and for others to follow. Thank you. Ali साहब दूसरे को देंगे.
ओके, तो बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया के आर रहमान खान साहब। अब मैं दरख्वास्त करूंगा जावेद यूनुस साहब से कि वो अपने ख्यालात इज़हार करें। आई वेलकम जावेद यूनुस साहब।
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum. What I would like to say is that we are indeed fortunate to have with us Mr. Suresh Prabhu, Member of Parliament, as also Rahman Khan Sahab. He's with all his eminence. Mr. Prabhu has had a very eminent and important role and innings in the economic landscape of the country, as we all know. What with his having headed the power sector, the commerce and industry sector, and also railways and civil aviation. his active participation as an economic plenipotentiary in various international economic fora is very commendable and so well known globally. Ideally, then now from the side of Empower, I personally would like to see the Muslim populace of our country as a potentially potent economic force as against political force. So within India and as a powerful earning diaspora abroad, particularly the Muslim countries. Now naturally, therefore, the progress and empowerment of this community should be viewed as quite contiguous to national interest and national development. See, of late, there has been a prevalent notion now for quite a while about the Muslim community as having been exploited as a purely political constituency for votes. But ironically speaking, now in recent times as well, the community has yet again served political interests. Conversely, by exclusion. It's a bit of a paradox. By exclusion for facilitating the consolidation of the majority vote bank on the agenda of the nationalist reconstruction of India. So such is the destiny of the community. All the while, Muslims and Islams are called in for being alien to the ethos, to the Indian ethos, the quintessentially Indian ethos. But I wonder what happens to the hundreds of years of cultural assimilation and integration of Muslims and their thought process with that of the larger commune, and it's hundreds of years. So there has been that kind of integration. Perhaps Islamic practices in India have been more localized than anywhere else in the world. If we talk about localization, it might augur well to see the community. Though it's a bit of a cliche to see the community as having participated in nation building over time, which it has. There are plenty of examples of Muslims and the Muslim community having led a lot of way to development of the nation. Also, there are enough, but there could be more of sung and perhaps unsung heroes from the Indian Muslim community. Now, on the other side, conversely, there are the derelict ones, very minuscule. So my friend say Shirvani did some, he cracked some number, very, very small, minuscule percentage of the derelict members of the community, who seem to be disproportionate, all because of the publicity that they receive. Now, for whatever reasons, which I would not like to delve into at this juncture, it's a very short time that I have to finish. Perception of Muslims in India is certainly not. Perception of Muslims in India is certainly not in consonance with their reality. Education, socio-economic upliftment, and their subsequent emancipation is definitely as imperative as is the need to dispel mistaken and misguided notions about the Indian Muslims, which there are plenty. So that is also quite a reality. The Prime Minister has of late, many a times, the Honorable Prime Minister has spoken about economic upliftment of Muslims, of the Muslim youth, about their finding an avocation, about their skill development, etc. But I dare say that until or unless there is a feeling of alienation and trifle insecurities in the minds of the Muslim youth and the Muslims generally, they will be constrained to remain in their ghettos, the ghettos of the mind more than literal ghettos, if I may say. But like, for example, of late, there is a great opportunity to secure the rozgar of the Muslim artisans in the export sector. It's very important. It's important for exports, balance of payments, but it also secures a lot of jobs for the poor Muslims, Muslim artisans. Having said that, I would like to end with these two lines. Empower under the leadership, competent, capable leadership of Dr. Khan has taken as a challenge to help the Muslims of India appreciate what their competencies and self-worth is. and also, very importantly, to close the gap between perception and reality about them. That is also very, very important at this juncture. My request to you, sir, Mr. Prabhu, sir, is that you might like to help bridge the gap between the ruling dispensation and the bridge the gap of understanding between the ruling dispensation and the Indian Muslim community. Herculean a task as it might be. And with that, thank you very much, and once again, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Yunus Javed Saab, for your deliberations. And as a background of IMPAR, IMPAR is a 3-month organization. Before IMPAR, Dr. MJ Khan Saab had an initiative called Indian Minorities Economic Development Agency. So the focus area of this organization had been to connect youth to livelihoods and connect youth to opportunities. So the idea behind this organization had been to identify all those schemes which Government of India has formed for the development and prosperity of our youth. And in this exercise, we were connecting, we were doing workshops, we were meeting people on the ground, talking to them about the schemes, and we were linking them to schemes. So this has been the background of IMPAR. And Javed Yunus Saab has correctly said that there is a vast majority of Muslim artisans in India who are in this period due to certain economic distress are not getting the what they should get. Muslims in India have a vast majority of artisans. I call them as MSMEs, though they are categorized as artisans, but I categorize them as MSMEs. These are small and micro enterprises. These are the people who are not only providing livelihood to themselves, but are the ones who are also creating jobs for others within their family and outside their family in the area where they are working. So Muslims' role as an artisan is a role of a MSME, and they are creating jobs. So this is a sector which needs special attention. I request Prabhu Saab to just have a thought on this area also. Now I request Mr. H.R. Khan Saab, who is the former Deputy Governor RBI Mumbai, to address the meeting.
I think I have met you when I was in Reserve Bank.
I know, of course I know.
So it's a great privilege to interact with you. And let me just very briefly tell you, I was the last person I would have joined any Muslim organization. But I joined IMPAR because it starts with Indian Muslims. So that is what attracted me. It is not Muslims, it is Indian Muslims Forum for Progress and Reforms. We know you have been such an outstanding parliamentary and outstanding minister, and you have been, as my colleague said, no-nonsense person, and you are part of the large, very strategic global dialogues. And I'm very happy that you have joined for this very important dialogue, which all of us are having with you. And it could not be a better person than you to have kick-started this dialogue with this platform. The topic which was given was New India of Social Harmony, Resilience, and Equal Economic Opportunities. So this is what I got this morning. So when I was thinking, what is New India, I was reminded only of old India. I'm old enough, there are young friends. So the old India, I'm talking of old India when we were fighting for our independence under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. So what was that representing? That was representing that we will be a game changer for the world, rising from the colonial era. This is a diverse country, so many religions, so many cultures, so many languages. This diverse country is going to develop after independence, both economically, politically, culturally, and socially through democracy. The whole world was looking at India, that how this diversity, democracy, and development will be marrying together. And there were no naysayers. For example, people often quote Churchill saying India is no more a geographical term. It is not a united nation, it is just like an equator. So there are many skeptics and critics that India will never ever be a united country and can never ever prosper with so much of diversity and anachronism and contradictions. For a long time, we did try to disprove that. But unfortunately, as some of my colleagues have said, that there is an air of mistrust. There is no gainsaying in hiding it. There is an air of mistrust, distrust, partly because of reality and more because of perception. So how do we go ahead? So in a country, 17% of the people, population, because we pride in our demography. If 17% of population is not part of this economic development, then obviously the country cannot develop. So how do you bring that 17% to the main economic mainstream and put aside all this mistrust and distrust? It's a big topic that if you have to go, that will need a lot of deliberation. But the 2-3 short points I will tell. How do you bring these people to the economic mainstream? So first thing is, one area why there is a mistrust, we have to create entrepreneurship among the Muslim youth. Skill development is something Javed Saab mentioned. Education is something very important. And one way of removing mistrust and distrust is you should have a mixed schooling, which I have been advocating. You have to provide, quote unquote, some practice for mixed schooling in all schools. So you should have children from all societies, so that is the ground where people understand each other, not go by misperceptions. So one is mischooling. Second is in economic opportunities. For example, in Singapore, there is no law. But if you go, you will find one Tamilian, one Malawi, one Chinese standing near. So that sort of diversity is encouraged, not by law, but by practice. So we also champion our diversity, but more in dialogue rather than in actual practice. So how do you create that diversity that everybody has a stake in the system? So to create that, one thing which is very important point Javed Saab mentioned is these artisans. So I come to that point. So if you want to create trust, create integration of this society with this large number of 17% of the people with this economic mainstream for their own development and the nation's own development, we have to create what I would term as social value. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Please
yeah.
go ahead, sir.
What I want to speak is about social value chain. So what do you mean by social value chain? Suppose you have an artisan in Muradabad or artisan in, even if you say a crude example, or artisan in Banaras. He gets into the value chain through the wholesaler, through the corporate, through the e-commerce entity, and there are different players. So if you get all integrated, there is a Muslim artisan, there is a Hindu wholesaler, there is a Christian e-tailer. So all this will create an ecosystem, each depends on each other. So this interdependence will cut down the mistrust and distrust, and each one will contribute for their own development and the nation's development. And the two final points in this regard, and I'm sure government has enough well-meaning people to see that, why I am focusing on this, you know better than anyone else here, that nation's development doesn't only happen with physical capital or financial capital. It has intangibles are very important. Intangibles like human capital, social capital, and institutional capital. So this social capital, how do you bring out? That is very important. And you can't have a social capital removing 17% away. If the 17% remains either aloof or angry, I think it doesn't help anyone's cause, neither their cause nor the nation's cause. The two other last point I just want to make is, one I mentioned about interfaith mix in the school. Second is there is a lot of course, entrepreneurial developmentship, I said. Other area is give focus to Muslim women, which is happening in a bigger way in this financial inclusion, SHG movement drive. There also a lot of intermingling will happen, and Muslim women who are supposed to be very backward, they will also learn entrepreneurship in a big way. including financial literacy. Now we are talking about digital literacy.
Mr. H.R. Khan Sahab, I would request you to conclude in just 10 minutes because we have only 45 minutes from Suresh.
Final point is that to create trust, I think you have to think of something, how to increase Muslim representation in police and thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. May I request MJ Khan Sahab, as he has already joined us, to give his views, the introductory note which we missed from him. Dr. MJ Khan Sahab, please join us. Hello. May I request Dr. MJ Khan Sahab to please.
Yes. Thank you very much.
We can't.
And all the members of the
we can't hear you.
We can't see you either.
Am I now? Am I clear now?
There is some echo.
Gone again.
I think.
Yes, sir. I would request Saeed Sahab.
Yes.
Saeed Sherwani Sahab. Saeed Sherwani Sahab is the MD of Sherwani Group of Hotels. So I would request Saeed Sherwani Sahab to speak a few words.
First of all, I would like to thank Honorable Shri Suresh Prabhu Sahab for giving us the time. We have never had the opportunity to meet, but I've heard a lot of good things from your fellow colleague and parliamentarian, my elder brother Salim Sherwani Sahab. You have held many posts, many portfolios, and many responsibilities. And in policy making for the government of India, you have played a very eminent role over the years. I want to tell you a little bit about why I joined Empire. I, like many fellow Indians who are listening to this or are present here today, was very disturbed by the last few years of the relationship between the various communities in India, especially the Hindu-Muslim community that was developing over the last few years. And I used to feel very helpless about it. When COVID, we were all affected by COVID, I thought that here comes a disease that shows no distinction between people, rich or poor, which has crossed all international boundaries, which has no respect for any religion. When it comes and gets you, whether you are rich, poor, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Sikh, it will get you and it will attack you all equally. And this was a time when the country should be together facing this onslaught of the COVID virus. But on 11th of March, when the Tablighi Jamaat incident happened in Nizamuddin Markaz, I was shocked by the hatred it generated, by the social media campaign that hit the whole community instead of the individuals or group of people who are responsible. It is in no way trying to hide their stupidity, but it was the beginning of the COVID, and when a lot of people were not taking it seriously. I had written then in my Facebook that those responsible should be punished. But please don't use this opportunity to bash the Muslims, because this will defeat the very purpose of bringing them into the mainstream that the government and some eminent people and responsible and learned people are trying. Yes, it is a community that needs to do a lot of reflection. It has to see why in the so many years it has been left behind. We are behind in many ways. And for our story in many ways is a story of lost opportunities. Education, modern education for our people, jobs for our youth, empowerment of our women. There are some of the cases that Empire has taken up that I joined Empire when Dr. Khan told me about this. And I felt, yes, this was on the right track. But one of the most important things that I feel today that we must discuss, and as an Indian, I will be failing in my duty, and also as a member of my community, failing my community if I don't bring it forward, is the perception of the Muslims, which has been created, yes, maybe because of some people's stupid behavior, but it has also been created by the national media and the social media. Where are those 30,000 Facebook accounts that have appeared and disappeared after the Tablighi Jamaat incident? Why is it that when debates happen, it is always the bashing of Muslims that seems to be the central theme of many channels? My request to you, sir, is that you have taken time and come here. Please let us know where we lack, what the community should do, how it should improve itself so it can play a positive role. Believe me that all of us are patriots. And there are many people in this, I can see the names here, who have contributed tremendously to the success of India in their own fields. But there is need to be done from the government. There is mistrust, there is miscommunication. And the first thing and the only thing that I would require is some kind of guidelines given to our national media that whenever debates are carried and various points of views are done, nothing should be said or done to create a diversion among the basic communities of India. I thank you again for giving us this time, and we were waiting to hear you, to learn from you, from your vast experience, and work together to build a strong India. We need to do it. There is things happening in the neighborhood. We need more to be united now to face the onslaught of our enemies that is coming around. We need to be united today to fight the COVID virus, which will create huge economic difficulties. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sayyid Sherwani sir. You have spoken from your heart. We value your suggestions. Everybody here and in the entire country, every Muslim is a true Indian. We are India. So now I invite Shiva Aslam Fahmy sir, who is a journalist, reformist, and also the India head of India Times .live. Mr. Shiva, Ms. Shiva Fahmy.
Thank you very much, Khalid Ansari Sahab. And I'm really delighted to be part of this panel and speaking directly to Suresh Prabhu Sahab, who I respect and admire for all the seriousness and all the technical expertise he has brought whenever he was the minister in various ministries. So really happy for this. Sir, today I want to bring to your notice one very important and very latest development, that is about the 30% slash of certain chapters in the CBSE syllabus of India right now. So it has happened yesterday only, and it is the topic is quite fresh. I hope you might have been able to see what has happened in various subjects, including economics and science and political science. Me being the student of political science, I have a very special concerns regarding these slashing of these topics. These topics are majorly the democratic rights, the food security, democracy and diversity of India, foreign policy, gender, caste and religion, and the relationship and the impact it has. So all these topics have been deleted from the CBSE from between 9 to 12 standards. My specific concern is that in a country like India, where most of the students drop out at the level of +2, and those who don't drop out for economic reasons or whatever reasons, they generally move on towards the technical lines, towards the technical professional lines. So problem is that इसमें होता ये है कि +2 लेवल पर जो हम सीखते हैं और सिखाते हैं अपने बच्चों को, जिंदगी भर वही उनके साथ रह जाता है. हो सकता है उसके बाद टेक्स्ट बुक्स उनकी जिंदगी में कभी ना आए, वो टेक्निकल एजुकेशन में जाएं या वो किसी और तरह से लाइवलीहुड अर्निंग प्रोसेस में चले जाएं, क्योंकि गरीबी भी है और हायर एजुकेशन इज हाईली अफेक्टेड बाय द इकोनॉमिक एम्पावरमेंट ऑफ द पीपल. मेरा कंसर्न ये है और आपके सामने मैं बहुत पुरजोर तरीके से इसको रखना चाहूंगी कि अगर हम लोगों ने बेसिक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैल्यूज को +2 लेवल पर नहीं दिया अपने यूथ को, हमने सोशल डाइवर्सिटी को, कल्चरल डाइवर्सिटी को रिस्पेक्ट करना नहीं सिखाया, हमने ये नहीं बताया कि कास्ट एक अच्छी बात नहीं है और कास्ट ने हमें हमारे टैलेंट पूल को रेस्ट्रिक्ट किया है, अरेस्ट किया है, अगर हमने नहीं बताया कि भारत दुनिया में क्राइम अगेंस्ट पर्टिकुलर जेंडर मामले में नंबर 1 है। सबसे ज्यादा महिलाओं के प्रति अपराध भारत में हो रहे हैं और ये हमारे सरकारी आंकड़े हैं जो रजिस्टर्ड केसेस के बारे में बात करते हैं। अगर हमने नहीं बताया कि केंद्र और गणराज्यों का क्या रिश्ता है और राज्यों की स्वायत्ता और उनकी अपनी पहचान और उनके अपने कंसर्न्स क्या हैं, अगर हमने उनको नहीं बताया कि भारत में सेक्युलरिज्म की जरूरत क्या है, और सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि सिटीजनशिप का जो पूरा आइडिया है कि हम एक एक्टिव पार्टिसिपेंट बने नेशन बिल्डिंग में, अगर हमने उनको इस +2 लेवल पर नहीं बताया तो उनमें से शायद less than 1% who finally go for higher education and opt for specific subjects in their MA, MPhil, PhD, then only they will come to know about the specificities of the Indian social systems. प्रॉब्लम ये है कि अगर हम 30% रिडक्शन के नाम पर फूड सिक्योरिटी जैसे फंडामेंटल राइट को कट कर देते हैं अपने सब्जेक्ट से, और हम अपने पूरे इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट मॉडल में जो जिन इदारों ने और जिन पॉलिसीज ने किरदार अदा किया है, चाहे वो पंचवर्षीय योजना हो, चाहे वो हमारा प्लानिंग कमीशन हो, चाहे दूसरी दीगर योजनाएं हैं, उन सब को अगर हम ऑब्लिटरेट कर देते हैं और ये बताते हैं कि हम जहां पर आज खड़े हैं वहां हम किसी जादू से खड़े हो गए हैं आकर के, मेरे ख्याल से ये बहुत बड़ा वॉइड क्रिएट करेगा भारत को समझने में, हमारे युवाओं को, और भारत की जो समस्याएं हैं उनको समझने में, क्योंकि ये सभी जो इदारे और समस्या ये पॉलिसीज थी, इनके पीछे खास तरह थी जिनको वो एड्रेस करना चाहते थे। तो ये बहुत ताज्जुब की बात है, जब मैं पॉलिटिकल साइंस की स्टूडेंट भी हूँ तो मुझे बहुत फिक्र होती है जब मैं ये सोचती हूँ कि अब आज के युवाओं को ये कभी पता नहीं चलेगा कि फूड सिक्योरिटी की जरूरत, फूड सिक्योरिटी जैसे राइट की जरूरत भारत में क्यों आ पड़ी, और वो हमने इस 21वीं सदी में शामिल किया था। यानी कि अपनी आजादी के इतने सालों के बाद हम एक यूनिवर्सल प्रोग्राम फॉर फूड सिक्योरिटी लेकर के आए थे, और हम यानी कि हम बहुत पीछे रह गए थे इस एक मामले में। तो इस तरह के बहुत सारे मामले हैं जो आज ही ये सामने आए हैं। मुझे लगता है कि आप जैसे संजीदा शख्सियत के सामने अगर हम एक सिटीजन के तौर पे भी, और एक पर्टिकुलरली कमिंग फ्रॉम अ जेंडर ग्रुप एंड माइनॉरिटी ग्रुप, तो मैं रखना चाहूंगी जिससे आप इसको जरूर इसमें दोबारा से विमर्श करवाइए अपनी सरकार में, उनसे कहिए कि ये जो पॉलिसी है ये बहुत खालीपन, बहुत कमजोरी, बहुत गरीबी लाएगी हमारी समझ में, हमारे बच्चों के इंटेलेक्चुअल डेवलपमेंट में, और ये कतई नहीं होना चाहिए। इस सेंटर और स्टेट के रिश्तों के हवाले से लेकर के डेमोक्रेटिक राइट्स से लेकर के, मतलब बहुत सारे ऐसे, मैं तो चाहूंगी कि आप जरूर उसको पढ़ें और उस पर गौर करें। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया शिबा जी, थैंक यू सो मच। एंड मोस्ट ऑफ आवर स्पीकर्स हैव now attended this session and they have given their views. Now I most warmly invite Shri Suresh Prabhu ji, who is Member of Parliament and Member PM's Sherpa of G7 and G20 countries, to address this first meeting of IMPAR with Suresh Prabhu sir. Welcome Suresh Prabhu.
So thank you very much. Khalid Ansari Saab, Rehman Khan Saab, who has been, as he correctly pointed out, we have been colleagues, and he has been a presiding officer of the Rajya Sabha, of which I am a member, and also fellow chartered accountant. Khan Saab has been the RBI deputy governor, who in fact was also in a way we are connected, because as a former chairman of Sarswat Bank, he was a regulator for us. We have also heard just now Shiva Femiji, Yunus Javed ji, Mr. Saeed Sherwani Saab, and quite a few of them. And I thank my dear friend MJ Khan for facilitating this kind of a very important dialogue. In fact, when we were trying to find out time, unfortunately, in the last few days, I've been doing something very crazy. I must have addressed more than 200 such programs on different subjects, more than 65 subjects. And even I was asking him how much time will be required. So we said about 45 minutes. So I have another program, but I felt that it was a mistake. We should have taken it at a longer period. So because then we could have heard everybody, responded to everybody and talked to everybody. But I know this is not the only time we are meeting. So we'll have many more occasions to meet and interact and take this dialogue forward. So firstly, let me congratulate all of you for being part of an organization which, as our former RBI governor said, first name is very important. Indian Muslims, obviously, all of you and the members of the organization are, but for what? For development, reform, and progress. I think this is what is a key important element of all of us which binds us together. We all realize that we are Indians, therefore we have a shared destiny, we have challenges which we have to face together, and we have to get over them by bringing these reforms in various facets of our social economic life. Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a very significant statement even before he took oath as a Prime Minister for the second time. I remember very distinctly in Central Hall of the Parliament, just after winning almost a landslide, and first time a Prime Minister who had won 2 successive terms with such a good majority after 1984, and he made a very significant statement that I had to be the Prime Minister of all the people of India, which I am, but I had to be not Sabka Saath and Sabka Vikas, which is so important, but Sabka Vishwas is as important. And therefore, all of us have a possibility of working together to build those 3 ethos, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and Sabka Vishwas, which actually will bind all of us together. I'll, as I said, because of limitation of time, let me briefly mention some of the very important points that were made. And one point which is very important is this progress and development. If all people in India are able to live their life with dignity, with such economic activities which can ensure that each one of them stand on their own feet, that is what will really make it happen. In fact, Khalid Ansari Sahab mentioned about artisans, which is a very important element of India's progress. In fact, let's go back a few centuries ago, when India was the largest economy, if not the largest, the second largest economy of the world. And what made that second largest economy for India? Those were the days before the Industrial Revolution. So obviously, not much industrial activity which contributed to the economic growth. It was the artisans which actually made it possible. And artisans were responsible for bringing real prosperity and the progress of India at that time. Unfortunately, post-industrial revolution, particularly during the imperial time, we lost a good part of our artisanship and also their contribution to economic development. So one of the biggest opportunity now is how do you rebuild it? So in the context of the new Atmanirbhar Bharat, which Prime Minister Narendra Modi has now kept as a mission for all of us, can we build in that Atmanirbhar Bharat a possibility of artisans playing a key and very important role? For example, I'll give an example. When I was the Commerce Industry Minister, I realized the point that is made by all of you. Can we involve everybody, irrespective of religion, irrespective of caste, irrespective of their social status, anything? How can we involve each one of them into the economic progress of the country? If you want to do that, if we go to the district, not just at macro level, what happened was we took some very important dynamic steps in 1991 to open up our economy. The premise that time was, and a legitimate premise, that once we grow naturally at macro level, the progress will percolate down through a process of trickle down effect. So we need not do much as long as we can address the challenges at macro level. But it has not really succeeded. And the point that Shibaji mentioned, why we need food security for such large number of people, is it has not percolated down to the level at which it should have happened. Though since 1991, our economy progressed quite a bit. So how do you do this? So I started on a program called $5 trillion economy, which Prime Minister Modi has been very vocally talking about. But in that, can we make district-led growth as a possibility? Each of the districts of India has this, one of the artisans some of these players who actually are there. You go to Moradabad, you will find people with some artisanship. You go to my native place in Maharashtra, in Kolhapur, you will find somebody who makes this Kolhapuri chappal. These are all the type of artisanship which has geographical indications also, which can actually add value to what they are doing. If you go to Northeast, there are people who make some fantastic hat, caps. Each one of them can be sold at $500, $600, when in that place it is not even sold for 500 rupees. So that means the artisanship can be the driver for future growth. And if each district, and we tap the district, we map the district, understand the district profile, and bring that key element of economic progress in the district, all those in the district will definitely get the benefit of the progress, and we don't have to wait for the trickle-down effect. And this is what can really bring in a change which people talked about. And Khan Saab, our RBI, former Deputy Governor RBI also mentioned about it. In that, as he correctly pointed out, can we have an interdependent supply chains, and also which always happen. Like you go to, again, from where I was won 4 Lok Sabha election, there are people who are fishermen. There are people who take those catch of the fish and sell in the market. It is part of a supply chain. So all different community, different people come together and create a supply chain which benefits each one of them individually, but they cannot succeed unless they work collectively. And that's why this is something which can be developed as a very important element. Javed Yunus Saab, I forgot to mention his name. He also mentioned very effectively the role of education. I think that is what is something which we should try to work. And now the element of education should be more skill-based, more market-oriented, more tuned to what is required for them to earn the livelihood from the education that they will gain. Can we develop, therefore, revisit some of these issues in a very important way, and bring those key elements, including skill, into this kind of a thing. I know there are many important points which have been made about social capital, about media's role, about what just now, what each one of you mentioned. I noted all the points, but point I am making, a short point on that issue, is that all these issues are important from your perspective because you feel very strongly for it. To take it to the logical level, we need some sort of a platform like this, wherein we understand each other better. We find out how can, in the framework of our constitution, in the framework of our legislative processes, in framework of our ethos and culture that we adopted over a long period of time, how do you ensure that we address these issues to the satisfaction of all the people of India and take them forward. Again, I'll come back to Prime Minister Modi's very important element of understanding that social harmony, social peace is something which is a prerequisite for progress, and he is very, very highlighting these issues from time and again. So when we have a political leadership which understands this and is guided by these principles, I think we should be able to progress as we want. But I welcome this very interesting forum and organization which has been created. Sherwani Saab had also mentioned about this very concern that he faced about the media, social media and elements of that. I think social media is a new emergent issue. Many people in the world are trying to cope up with that. The role of media is always under question in many forms, in many ways. So I think we have to evolve from these processes to understand how do you take best of this and how do you avoid the worst of it. And that is what is the process which will lead us to bringing a much better India, which is the purpose of your organization, which is the purpose of all the citizens of India, including all of us. And therefore, let's work together and find out how to build a new modern India, as you correctly said, in which each one of us will feel we are stakeholders, we are the beneficiaries, and we also are contributing to that progress. So I think if we do that, that is what ultimately will bring us what we really want to bring. As I said, whatever you have mentioned, I jotted it down. I will also talk to, because not that all the issues I deal with individually, but I will make sure that these are the issues which are properly communicated to the people who actually deal with them. But Khan Saab knows, as Rehman Khan Saab I am talking about now, as a Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha, he would always give direction to the ministers, to the members, that try to work together, because each one of us have one issue or the other, which each one of us feels so highly important, and rightly so. But as a collective body, we have to make sure that we move on with those issues as part of our important priorities, and reconciling it with the priorities of others, and try to build a proper and collective mission for taking our country forward, which is an overriding mission for all of us. So I think, I am sure we'll continue to work together, continue to work on that. As I said, unfortunately, I didn't realize, because Khan Sahab, I'm not talking about MJ Khan Sahab, he had told me 45 minutes will be good enough. So I have another program which already delayed for it. But I know this is not the end of the program. This is the beginning of our dialogue, and we'll continue to work together. So thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this process, to understand each other better, to work together and take our joint mission forward of building a stronger and better India. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your enlightening views. We are all delighted, and we are motivated to take the Atmanirbhar Bharat forward. Now, may I request Colonel Salim Durrani Sahab to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Khalid Sahab. On behalf of INPAR, I sincerely thank Honorable Suresh Prabhu Sahab for taking out time to interact with all of us here. He has patiently listened to the genuine concerns and suggestions of the community members, and he himself has given extremely valuable suggestions for the community to partake in the progress of our great nation. On behalf of all of us at INPAR, I propose a vote of thanks to Shri Suresh Prabhu Sahab. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time for all of us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Thanks to everybody for participating.